On October 3rd, the Somerset County Commissioners heard comments from over 24 Maine citizens from Jackman to Benton. The meeting room at the county courthouse in Skowhegan was filled to capacity, with many people standing in the back. A portion of their regular meeting was in response to citizens' concerns about the commissioners having endorsed a Central Maine Power Plan to build a $1 billion transmission line from the Canadian border to Lewiston. The purpose being to carry electrical power from Quebec to Massachusetts. Every person in the room, other than the commissioners, was against the construction of the so-called CMP corridor, with the exception of a spokesman for Central Maine Power. Those in attendance hoped to persuade the county commissioners to rescind their previous approval. Speakers will cite dozens of reasons for not building the corridor. They will also debunk most of the facts presented by CMP. Most at the hearing were concerned that people not living along the corridor would not act in unity with them because those outside of the affected area would not care. What Maine people have to do is realize that huge corporations use this divide and conquer strategy to exploit Maine's citizens. It is imperative that people learn to support each other, no matter what region they live in. The meeting opened with a CMP representative, John Carroll, presenting an update of CMP's plan to the county commissioners. Several at the meeting stated that this update was pretty much the same scheme they've been selling throughout the state for the past 6 months or more.
So thank you again. I am John Carroll with Central Maine Power, and just want to bring you up to date on a project that we've been working on now for about 1.5 years, I guess it is, and some of the progress we're making. So I'll just start by just reminding folks of first why we're doing this, why something needs to be done, and why we think this is the right choice. But fundamentally, we're building a transmission line that is going to be good for New England. It's going to be certainly good for our environment, and it's going to be very good for Maine. I want to make sure I cover those points today. So if you go to the third slide, there's a couple of pie charts there. And what this represents is sort of a statement of the challenge that New England really faces. If you look on the left, there's a pie chart that shows up that in 2017, New England used almost half of its energy came out of natural gas, and about another quarter of it, or 30%, came from nuclear. So that on an annual basis, we're heavily dependent on those resources. And if you look at the pie chart on the right, that's an example of a single day when the New England energy system is stressed by extreme cold. And what you see on that day is that the other component, sort of critical component in those situations, is oil. When natural gas is diverted in the wintertime for heating, and energy loads are high because of electricity and heat and cooling, our system is stressed. The result of that is that we have high emissions from our energy resources. We're subject to a lot of fluctuation in price and price spikes. And fundamentally, there's an underlying lack of sort of concern about reliability. So if you go to the next slide, it's a map, and this is a map from the ISO. ISO is the regional grid operator, and their analysis points to the fact that our generation fleet, New England's generation fleet, is aging, and about a third of it, 10,000 megawatts, is going to go offline over the next 10 years. They're going off for environmental reasons, economic reasons, licensing reasons, but it's going to go away. So if you go to the next slide, this is a quick summary of how we got here. Massachusetts, which is by far the largest energy consumer in New England, electricity in particular, took the initiative to go out and seek a really large injection of clean, reliable energy. They want to address the price issues, they want to address the carbon emissions, and they want to address the reliability question, fundamentally. And because there's such a large portion of our supply, they can really take the lead and make a dent or move the needle in trying to solve the problem we all face. So if you go to the next page, under benefits for Maine, I think it's really important because a lot of people have looked at this project, and yes, it's being paid for by Massachusetts, and yes, the contracts are being signed with Massachusetts. But there are clearly benefits in Maine. If you look at the first 10 years of this project, starting in 2017 through 2027, there'll be $1 billion worth of value. There are jobs, there are property taxes, there are benefits in energy savings, there are benefits in terms of boost to our economy. This is all information that was produced by analysis by the Center for Business and Economic Research at the University of Southern Maine, using standard economic models for this type of spending and this type of project. And no one has disputed the direction of all these benefits. You know, we expect a higher benefit on the price side for natural gas than one of the consultants for the DEP, for the PUC, because they use different assumptions in their modeling. We're all forecasting 20 years worth of natural gas prices. If our forecasts are different, they're based on different assumptions. But even if you accept the assumptions of the PUC, own consultant, these are benefits. There will be benefits there. The other benefits are 1,700 jobs, clean air. Certainly Maine's electricity use has an impact on air quality. And this is like eliminating 265,000 metric tons a year from Maine's own electricity use. That's the equivalent of taking 57,000 cars off the road every year for the next 20 years. This is a 20-year contract. Obviously, we talked about the opportunity for enhanced broadband in this region, because we'll install broadband on our system and make it accessible. And then finally, enhanced recreation, community impact, and social impact, and environmental impact. So they're going through their own siting process now as well.
I was wondering if there was any issues on that side of the border. And my last question is, you said that you were going to displace wetlands. You're not going to mitigate those and recreate them nearby or along the way?
Yes,
As you
absolutely.
said displace, that means that they're going to be permanently gone without any mitigation.
Right. I didn't address the mitigation.
Right. So,
But
there will
I can, absolutely. So when it's part of our application to the DEP, and when you fill wetlands, actually when you change the wetlands in any way, so if you change the characteristics from a wooded wetland to a shrub wetland, or if you fill a wetland on a temporary basis or on a permanent basis, there are formulas for how you will provide compensation for that.
But the transmission line is going to be in one area that CMP already owns. The benefit that they've told us certainly outweighed any benefit that I've heard about from the wind tower. And from my way of understanding this, it would limit any further wind towers from going up if this was there.
Currently, as proposed, is 150 feet wide. There's another 150 feet, okay? That is going to be used for something. All it's gonna take is a power purchase agreement from Rhode Island, power purchase agreement from Connecticut, power purchase agreement from New York, and they're gonna wanna put another power line in. And when that goes in, it's going to be for windmills. Those windmills, so when you give them this corridor, you are inviting windmills in. I also, based on what you had asked about the grounding line and the having fiber cable in it, sounded odd to me. I phoned a friend when I was there. Your partner from CMP is correct. It is used for communication with windmills. So understand what that is and what the end goal here is on this power line. It's to give them clearly a merchant cable to go through here with no benefit to me, in my opinion. Some of the things that you heard here this morning were 1,700 jobs on this, and $1 billion. He said that here today, $1 billion. If you do the math on that, that's 500. If you did it for 1 year, that's $588,000 a year per person for 1 year. If you took that and took it out for 10 years, like he said, the $1 billion, that's $58,000 per year per job for 10 years. And there are not going to be 1,700 jobs per year for 10 years on this job, on this power line. So I really think you need to look beyond what you're being told by CMP. My experience so far is the information you're being told is incorrect, and I really ask that you really look at that information, because what you're being told is not accurate.
Thank you.
Tanya Moret, I live in Long Pond Township, and I sell real estate in the area, which certainly the detriment to I live in the area, I have a camp in the area, I sell real estate in the area. it's gonna be more devastation for us economically. But I did wanna kind of tag on to what he said first. I went to a presentation CMP made in Jackman, and I see they haven't changed their way of pulling the wool over our eyes since then, even though a lot of things were pointed out and they had to backpedal. The first thing he told us about was about New England's usage and gas and oil and the amount and how it causes us increases in expense, and it's costly to us, but it's not. If you guys just, even Googling, you could find that Maine has such a high percentage of clean energy that we produce and we use. This is not about Maine. That we've already paid, by the way, the taxpayers, our rate increases, if we look back into it, ask what we absorbed for costs to create that big station that converts from DC, which is what's gonna come down this corridor, they're trying to shove down our throats, and then send it down to Massachusetts so that they can get more of our federal tax dollars by getting clean energy, because we paid for that already. They've already taken that out of our hides, and also that 50 million they're gonna send to low-income Massachusetts people's coming out of our hides. And all the money they're making, because they're not doing this to benefit us, 86% of their profits goes to Spain. It's a Spanish-owned company, CMP. It's just, they're shoving it down our throats, and what they're sending here was exactly what they told us then. They haven't corrected it because it's what we want to hear, but it's not the truth.
My name is John Willard. I own the Birches Resort in Rockwood. I used to own a whitewater rafting business. I've been a guide for 52 years in the area. I'm also a commercial float plane pilot. I'd like to submit 4 letters here from the people up in the Enchanted Township area, representing 140 landowners that are opposed to this project. If I could hand them over to you. Thank you. I also had my own letter, which I forgot to bring, so I'll just say a couple of words. I know I have another minute and a half. And the Kennebec River Gorge, CMP says it's 4 miles long. It's really 13 miles long. The raft trip's 13 miles. Also, there's Moxie Gore, Moxie Falls. The power line would cross that as well. I mean, would that go underneath both places? You know, they don't talk about that. There's a lot of things they don't talk about. The power line is mostly on Weyerhaeuser land. Isn't there a more direct route to the south over some other land if the power line is truly necessary? And my opinion is that power to Massachusetts through Maine is really not our problem. This is really a money-making thing for Central Maine Power.
Where the corridor will go through, it's a beautiful area, unbroken wildland, with native brook trout, other species. My biggest concern with the corridor is that even though it would fill the current power need in Mass, it would also open the door for future wind projects, because with this corridor, local wind wind power would now have access to the grid. The corridor is paid for by CMP's huge investment in Hydro-Quebec. It would initially be 150 feet wide for the DC line, with an additional 150 feet reserved adjacent to it for future projects, transmission projects. That is the wind industry's ticket to expand. Some say that the hydro line will hinder wind expansion because of the competition, but I don't believe it. I believe that the government, federal or state, will promote and subsidize green energy regardless, even if it is not practical and can't be paid for. Excess power from Maine can simply be sold further down the road. There are many wind turbines already in existence in Maine. It doesn't make any sense to install them, especially in a pristine area like that.
My name is Garnett Robinson, and I'm a seasonal resident, camp owner, and taxpayer of the West Forks in northern Somerset County. I'm also the owner of a small assessing and appraisal company, Maine Assessment and Appraisal Services Incorporated, located in Dixmont, Maine. I'm a graduate of the University of Maine with a degree in land use planning. I am a certified Maine assessor and licensed appraiser, and have been an instructor for Maine Revenue Services, teaching at their property tax school since 2003. I am a former forest ranger, having worked in the Jackman and Boundary Mountains where this project proposes to cross into the state, and also cross the Kennebec. A former grammatrist, map technician at J.W. Sewell Company, a former code enforcement officer, a fourth generation master Maine guide who has guided extensively in the area of this proposed project, and a member of the town of Dixmont Planning Board since 2005.
I've revalued and assessed property in Maine from as far south as Hartsville and as far north as St. Francis, and I'm currently the assessor or assessor's agent in the communities of Cushing, Swanville, Clinton, Detroit, which is in Somerset, Palmyra, Plymouth, Etna, Dixmont, Glenburg, Bowerbank, Easton, St. Francis, West Forks, Plantation, and Caratunk. In addition, my company is currently revaluing the towns of Washburn and Liberty. I wish to make it clear that I am not testifying or giving testimony on behalf of any town where I am currently employed, but wish only to add input that I feel is being overlooked as others testify primarily to the dramatic destruction of scenic views and recreational areas. My concern is much more directed at the economic field, as I am observing Central Maine Power make assertions to towns and apparently counties of future tax benefits, and how this project would be a windfall for taxpayers, reducing communities' tax burdens with promised new value from the proposed lines. My personal experience as a member of the Dixmont Planning Board and also as tax assessor is that Central Maine Power is extremely deceptive during both the permitting phase and later reporting of values. I have attached with this testimony for the Maine Reliability Power Program for Dixmont, Exhibit 1, their shoreline zoning and site plan review application. This was that big project they did, was $4.5 billion throughout the state. I wish you to know, item on page 4, item 15, the estimated cost of $24 million. In addition to putting forward this number in their application, CMP presented at a public hearing in Dixmont and put on a presentation where I had Mike Rogers, he at the time was the head of Maine Revenue Services, Director of Municipal Services, attend to tell us what the stabilized effect of $24 million would be on our mill rate once state valuation captured these values. There was even talk about tax increment financing, TIF, for the project by the company if these values were factual or close estimates. I now wish you to observe, which I'm going to give you these, the property tax declaration. They declared at the finish was $4,256,181, 17% of the value they estimated. I made a phone call to Steve Holt, he upped it to $6 million, 25% of that value. This year, I included this year's tax return, it's only $8 million out of a $24 million estimate they put in permits they signed. They signed also the tax return that I'm talking about that comes to towns here is done under Title 36-706. They even reference it here. That's a true and perfect list. It says that. There's nothing true or perfect about their approach. I also include here the town, I work in Detroit as the assessor's agent. The town of Detroit had a permit of $28.8 million. 2015, when they came back with their values, they say $10,436,000. Nowhere near 37% of what they said they would receive. I've also included, just so you can see how dramatic and how widespread this is, I've also included the town of Windsor, which has the biggest substation in New England. They permitted for $138 million. 2015, when they came back with their return, had $71,455,266. They had to hire an appraiser to come in, and they came in at $110 million. Much different than what they're reporting, much different than what they're estimating. As stated above, this deceptive practice of promising revenue prior to a project is currently working in full force. As you can see from my attached email correspondence I have an email that has between John Carroll, which I believe was the man speaking here, and Elizabeth Crusoe in the back. She's the first selectman in Caratunk, which was forwarded to me because they were asking me, is there going to be this much revenue? So I've been telling my towns to be really wondering what numbers they give them, because like my understanding and watching CMP is they're not truthful in what they give you for values when they permit or when they give you their tax returns. So thus while the NEC, this is what his statement was, thus while NEC would increase tax payments to Caratunk by about $100,000 annually. Stopping the project will not ensure future tax revenues from a solar project in Caratunk. Your community will simply miss out on this opportunity. Then I say, please note my another attachment, which is from Lori Valigra, and she was answering questions like he was answering questions to Lori. Mr. Carroll said it still could be a few years until main revenue service, CMP and the towns agree upon exactly how the tax benefit of any CEC project would be distributed. So he's telling her in an email the same day that this is going in the paper, that you're gonna lose 100,000 in tax revenue, and he's telling in the paper that it's gonna be years before we know what the tax benefit is. I'm not sure how we can relate those two. My obvious question, and one that you as county commissioner should be asking, is why is Mr. Carroll making assertions of future revenue to towns and then going on record stating it will be years before we know how any future tax benefits will be distributed? This is a town in your region, Caratunk. Shouldn't the county and anyone seeing CMP's past permitting and reporting of values be wondering if CMP can make false assertions at worst, or be so far off in estimates to towns, whether they're reported estimates to the county, PUC, LUPC, and DEP are accurate or truthful? The permitting process, whether before towns, counties, state, or federal entities, requires accurate, honest estimates and reporting, and as shown above is not the case with CMP. So you're gonna have 3 separate instances here, plus her email.
I've got other people, so
Are you gonna leave us that information?
I'm gonna leave them the whole thing.
if you leave that, the administrator, they'll give us a copy.
Awesome.
We'll review it.
And anybody's worked for the town, I know Lloyd has, he'll know what these are, so he'll know how to read it. But you can see, this is their permit that they signed, that's their estimates. These are also, that's for the 3 towns. I've included the rest of that with, so you can see with the, I've got my card, and if there's a lot more towns that they've done permitting, so if you need more examples.
My name is Howard Trotsky. I live in Caratunk for 6 months, and I'm a resident of the city of Bangor. I want to clarify something, because you hear rumors, and I'm not exactly sure. County commissioners are very important, because most of this is going through Somerset County. Has anybody written any letters of endorsement, or have you taken a vote on this corridor?
Well, I know early on, and I don't keep my emails, but early on, I'd gotten response, and it was fairly large to the support up there after CMP. I don't know what kind of community communications they had up there, but it seemed like there was a larger support at that time.
Okay, let me say something here.
Wow.
I was the Republican Senate chairman of committee in the Senate from 1974 to 82. The Committee on Public Utilities, the Natural Resources Committee, and the Energy Committee. And when I had a public hearing, the bill sounded very good. Title of the bill, and people spoke for it. And after you heard people speak for the bill, sounds this is a good bill. Then we'd ask the people who were opposed. When they spoke, all of a sudden, it was not so good a bill. And the thing is that we had hearings up at the Forks, the West Forks, and overwhelmingly people were opposed to this. Now, I want to make something clear here. After Mr. Carroll spoke, the only thing I heard Mr. Carroll speak and nobody else, I'm before this proposal. Sounds pretty good. But the thing is, he said something that's very important. He said, we made a proposal to that community. That community up there consisted of Susie Hockmeyer of Northern Outdoors, Joe Christopher of Three Rivers, and Larry Warren of Hudson Trails. And then when they got up at the Forks meeting, Mr. Carroll presented things, and then Larry Warren got up and he talked about, we have negotiated. Well, 3 people or 4 people don't negotiate the Kennebec River for the people of the state of Maine. And there should be no clapping at this hearing. No, it's the truth, because somebody may feel intimidated. But the thing is that this then, everywhere I went, it's a done deal, it's a done deal. Joe Christopher got up at that meeting at the Forks and he said, it's a done deal. Then they formed this Western Mountain Rivers Corporation. I think it's a CMP handout. Now, I want to make clear to you gentlemen that I happen to like CMP. They generate power. When the power's out, they come and we get power back again. I wasn't here in the 1930s, but they took by eminent domain most of the Kennebec Valley, Wyman Lake. They created Wyman Lake. They created Harris Station. Without the creation of Harris Station, in my opinion, and I was a raft guide for Northern for many years, there never would have been a stable rafting industry. So there is a lot of good that they do, but in this case, as someone said, this is no longer CMP as we know it. This is an international corporation. And they basically have offered $22 million to sell the river for these raft companies to sell their consciences. And you got to follow the dollar. So $22 million. Now, what are the things that they can get? CMP can donate or by sale, sell river frontage along the Kennebec River. Well, for recreation. The Kennebec River from the Forks to Caratunk is beautiful. It's not the gorge, but the thing is, a lot of people use it who can't afford to go rafting. They tube, they do other things. It's one of the most magnificent stretches of river in the state of Maine, the Kennebec, in that section. Secondly, when it came down to people suggesting, if you're going to put this wire across the river, put it up at Brookfield's establishment, the Harris Station. Basically, they don't want it under the river. They want it above the river because they want the $22 million, okay? And each of these companies they have a campground on the river. They want to buy that land. Well, the biggest company is for sale for $4.5 million, Northern Outdoors. So when they sell the company now, all of a sudden, that campground may end up becoming cottage lots along the river. So this Western Mountains Rivers Corporation is nothing but bribery. And they don't belong in the business of choosing winners and losers, Central Maine Power. Their job as a public utility it used to be to generate and distribute power. Their job today is to distribute power, not to go out making deals with people. So it's affected they knew what they were doing. They turned around and they can come to you and say, the rafting companies are for this proposal. The rafting companies are not for this proposal, and the guides are not for this proposal. The real issue here is going to fragment the Maine forest, one of the last forests we have. Now, we in Maine, when you've been in Maine, born and bred in Maine, and lived here all your life, you get the feeling that, we have plenty of forest. But I can tell you right now, what's going on, at least with camp lot owners, is I was a teacher. No local kid is ever going to be able to afford to buy a lot on a lake in Maine because the price is now at $300,000, $400,000. But we do have a heritage, and that's that great North Woods. People of Jackman are against it. People of Caratunk are against it. Caratunk came out against it. West Forks came out against it. A vote of 45, I think, to 7. I didn't know there were that many people up there. So there's a whole other side to this, and some of the people who've been around have heard this other side. It's long and it's tedious. I went through public hearing of the legislature, and you sit there from 1 till 5, 6 o'clock. But you listen, and then you don't commit yourself until the last word is said on the Senate floor. And that's the way this county commissioners group should not commit themselves, wait till the last word is said. He was very convincing, but there wasn't the whole story told.
Hi, I'm Kathy Barkley. I appeared before you several meetings ago. At that time, I made public comments regarding NECEC with the information that was available then. Since then, with more information, I am certain this project has no long-term benefits to Somerset County or Maine. I'm not going to restate my previous comments, but I want to address my new concerns. I have questions that I hope the commissioners will be able to answer today, or if they can't be answered today, I hope the commissioner's office will contact me with the answers. I spoke with Chris from the SEDC today. The fact that the Somerset Economic Development Committee Corporation was in favor of this seems to play heavily in your decision writing the original letter. I know Chris was not on board as part of that organization at the time. When I talked to him today, what I'm seeking is the research that was done into Mr. Carroll's previous presentations that would demonstrate that any CEC would not negatively impact one of the SEDC's top 3 missions as stated on their webpage, the economic success of Somerset County tourism. I'm looking for facts and figures on the impact of tourism as a whole, not just rafting companies, and CMP's record of truthfulness when stating community tax impacts. Did the SEDC just accept Mr. Carroll's presentation of fact, or was actual fact checking done? Chris will email the answers to these questions to me, but I'm curious as to whether the commissioners asked this of SEDC at the time of their presentation. Have any commissioners or staff reached out to opposers or state agencies for fact-based information on any CEC? Lloyd, I'm very fond of you too, but since the issue has been raised, has Commissioner Drafton's possible conflict of interest been addressed by commissioners or staff? Have my previous concerns and the concerns of Somerset County towns and citizen organizations opposed to any CEC been addressed at workshops or meetings? Public comment is great, but it is not a part of an effective democracy if our representatives don't consider and research the issues the public comment raises.
Wayne Boy from downtown. I have 2 internet businesses that this corridor will absolutely affect because our brand in both businesses is from the mountains of western Maine. But that's not what I'm even going to get into at this point because that's irrelevant. What's relevant is the opposition to this is in the thousands, okay? We're just a tiny little fraction here. It's not partisan at all. It's right across the board. I'm about as conservative as you can get, and I'm working with, you know that, right? Oh, you know that because I've had arguments with them. There's people to the far left, there's people to the right. It has nothing to do with politics. This is about everything about Maine. And I have a question for you gentlemen, because it was very disheartening to all the constituents of yours that I've spoken with, where you guys gave the green light to this, okay? Very disheartening. There's a petition that is starting that you gentlemen are going to receive. How many signatures do we need to show on this petition, begging you, asking you, where you're going to speak for your constituents? Because I think you're going to realize when you see this petition that you weren't speaking for your constituents. How many signatures are you going to need for you to change your mind? For you to change your public?
Send your support publicly.
Anything that.
How many signatures do you need?
I'm not gonna give you a number, but whatever you can get, you send to the county administrator, we will review it and address it.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you.
And I wanted to start off and I got carried away. I want to thank you for listening to us.
You're welcome. I'm gonna give you another 5 minutes and then I've got to move on to other county business. So I'll take the ladies, been waving at me for half an hour to that.
My name is Cheryl Huey-Hart. I'm here from Jackman. I am part of an 8th generation family who is in the Moose River Valley and working with its resources as loggers and operators of sporting camps. I'm a registered nurse. I'm a public health nurse, so I'm a humanitarian person. I know you're hearing all kinds of input about the economics. I know you're hearing about the environment, and they're all crucial. But you need to look at this from a human standpoint. I don't know what the percentage is of people in our valley and our neighbors out in the unorganized townships whose very livelihood relies 100% on our greatest natural resource, the natural beauty of our region. We have one of the darkest night skies in the entire United States. We have one of the lowest population of individuals in the entire eastern seaboard beyond the Mississippi River. And this, what I'm calling the ugly brown monster, is going to be there forever. It will forever scar what are currently now sight lines that you don't have to shift too far to avoid a windmill over here. You have nothing but what nature has provided. And I understand that economy is crucial. It's not just for Central Maine, it's for we, the real people of Maine. We, the people who choose to live in what people call god-awful country, not God's country. We matter, and what we think matters, and you are here to represent we, the people of Maine, so we are here requesting that you do so. And I am one of the individuals who will sign the petition that has been discussed today, and we will get that to you as soon as we can. The petition has been circulated in Moose River. My nephew, Will Huey, I'm very proud of him because he has learned the political process, he's educating us, and he's encouraging us to use our voices. And my little 7-year-old niece, Nina Huey, sent her testimony to the PUC. And when she told me, Auntie, this is about the dumbest thing I've heard in my whole life, I couldn't argue with her.
My name is Kimberly Lyman. I'm from Caratunk. And thank you for staying and hearing us late. A lot of people drove a long way to come to be heard. I have letters from 7 or 8 residents of Somerset County, as well as Moxie Pond Homeowners Association, that I'd like to submit on their behalf. And you will all read these?
Yes.
I'm just curious.
Yes.
And oops, this is mine, sorry. And I'll be quick. I have a letter here that was sent by the commission to Governor Paul LePage on my birthday last year. Thank you. Opposing the wind project in Maine, and you gave 9 great reasons why you oppose the project, and last ending with the recent 2017 Muir study. All of those reasons that you oppose the wind project are directly pertain to this same project with Central Maine Power. So 4 months later, you then signed a letter supporting the Central Maine Power's NECEC project. So I'm trying to figure out, and I would love to ask the question, and it doesn't have to be answered today, but I'd love to know why the flip-flop on your position for those points, because those points meant so much 4 months prior. That's one of my concerns, and one of the things I'd like noted is that they have been asked at every one of these meetings, does this line promise that there will not be wind along it in the future?
That was told to us, yeah, it was. In one of the meetings, we said in a breakfast meeting, and we pounded that same
They
thing.
have told
We
me
were
that
told there would be no wind on this line.
They told us there was no wind in Jackson.
Thorn,
Right next to it.
One at a time.
Thorn, so I went to the Farmington meeting first in June, in July. I went to the Forks meeting, I went to the Jackman meeting, I went to another Forks meeting. And that question has been asked at each one of those. Can they guarantee there will be no wind along this in the future? And different people who work for CMP have said no, they cannot guarantee that. And they have said to you they've gone out of their way for this particular line, the way they're going to arrange the line, to go around certain environmental obstacles. But they already have a line coming south. Why wouldn't they use that one then? This line actually lines them up perfectly for wind. And I do feel that it is a conflict of interest to be on the board that was comprised at the urging of CMP and by a friend of CMP, and a very small group of people collected who then represented us without knowing we were being represented. And that's the positive feedback you were hearing, was a very small core group of people who did love the sound of that money. And to the point of the gentleman on the end earlier, there are some of us who do fully understand that $22 million is nothing.
And that is not a conflict of interest, because I receive no personal monetary gain or anything from this. It's purposely to be there, that if this thing comes to life, that it will be to help direct where these monies are to go. It's just like here in Somerset County. I'm the chairman of the TIF committee, which distributes monies to different organizations. Like last year, we distributed the county about $80,000 to the snowmobile industry in northern Somerset County. In this summer, the TIF committee distributed $35,000 towards the Jackman Health Center. And like, I'm on those two committees. I was on the
600,000 for the broadband.
yes, and the broadband and things like this. And this is the reason the county commissioners are on these things, not.
But your constituents are telling you that they're against it. You didn't, with today's ability to access the people that you work for, not a peep heard from June of 2016 to April of 2018 by the local people. 69 people in Caratunk. The postage to get a letter to us, nil. 33 people in the Forks. And that's all I'm saying is that I think it is a conflict of interest because you're working based on what you're hearing. I mean, I understand you're not personally getting money, but you're kind of going rogue. You're accepting money from CMP when your people who are now hearing about this are telling you no. So we would ask you to be our hero and rescind your support and step away from CMP's offered money. That's what we would like to see.
One more.
Thank you.
I've been 23 years at Rock Pond, and I had one say here today that was going within 200 feet of the pond. I'm telling you it's going to be 400 feet away. But that double line, why didn't they go straight down through? They got that, and they started it 3 years ago, and you asked anybody about it, oh, you got to go talk to this one somewhere. Then last year, they started painting, and that's when I found out what this whole line was. And this year, you couldn't find where it's going. We're still trying to, and I have a fellow here can verify it. We have found out where it's going till you get pretty down near to Colebrook, cross. Can't find it. The other side of going across Moose River yet. We ain't got to Moose River really, but we're marking the trails and showing the 300 feet everywhere we can. And that's what I got to say. And another thing I do want to bring up, I was over there when they put the windmills in over the other place. 90% of the workforce comes from out of state. And if you want to see what's going on with Weyerhaeuser, take a ride through Rock Pond over to, they've got them mills all cut off right now. They know, you know what they're for when you go by.
What's your name? Elizabeth Caruso. Thank you. So I wasn't planning on speaking today, but there's some issues that came up that I feel like I can speak to. I'm the first selectman of Caratunk. And I did listen to Mr. Carroll, and I listened to what you folks had to say, and it's really great that you're willing to take all the comments from people. Because there are a lot of people, as you know, who don't have town organizations that they can speak to, so they need to know that they're heard. So we appreciate that. First of all, just some bullet points. The mitigation. He said he mitigated with the communities. So, and he told that to the Board of Selectmen in Caratunk as well. We were never contacted for any kind of mitigation. We have never been offered representation on the board. We were told that we're going to have money for, you know, education or for this, that, and the other thing. No one ever asked us. No one ever had a conversation with us except he spouted that when he asked us for our letter of support. So Caratunk gave a letter of support, and then we found out more information about what really was going on, and then we rescinded our letter of support. One of the things, and one of the questions that you had had to do with something that was very important to us. So one of the competing projects for this NECEC was a Next Era and CMP solar project on the old radar station, which is in Karatunk in Moscow. And we were for that. That will greatly help Karatunk and Moscow. That could double our town valuation. So obviously it benefits the residents of Moscow and Karatunk. However, because this is a DC line, this DC line is like a highway with no on and off ramp. So you cannot enter with any other renewable project. So no, you can't get wind power onto this particular DC line. But down the road, when they clear the other 150 feet, you could get those wind power projects on there, and eventually we could maybe get a solar project. But what's happening is, first of all, that may be cost prohibitive down the line. And first of all, what was very upsetting is that this project, this DC line, is flooding the main power grid. So it is flooding the main power grid, which we are an exporter of power. So it's not necessary for us to have this power line coming through. That's why it does no public benefit, and it doesn't satisfy a public need. And having to do with the 1,700 jobs that they say that they're creating, this flood of power is going to force biomass and natural gas plants to close. So they're not offsetting all of those plants that are closing and all these full-time, year-round jobs that Mainers are losing. When these 1,700 jobs are not necessarily Mainers, and they're definitely not full-time, year-round. So to say that it's 1,700 jobs sounds really great, but it's misleading. So that was very upsetting to us. Something that Mr. Carroll said is the $22 million mitigation. He said is only geared toward the river crossing impact. And he said that was more for social. So I think he's downplaying that. It's not just social, but it is economic, and it is our scenic and wild river. And it is our brand. It is what people come to Maine for. But what about all the other mitigation? So I'm an intervener with the PUC, the DEP, and the LUPC. And at a visual rendering presentation they had last Friday, they stated that they were trying to move the scenic impact away from Route 201, which, as you know, is a National Scenic Byway. And that's great. But guess where they were moving it? They were moving it into all the areas of our pristine, unbroken wilderness. They were moving it to all the places that recreationists, tourists from all over the country come to. They were going off 201, which no one fishes and hunts on 201. So they were going, and they were claiming that, well, the Capitol Road and the Spencer Road are just logging roads. Well, as you know, because you're from Somerset County, so I'm assuming you've been up there, those aren't just logging roads. Those are our access roads for how we access Coburn Mountain, Enchanted Pond, Grand Falls, how we go to all the places, Coldstream. That's how we get to where all these assets are that make our place such a treasure. So there is no mitigation. They think that they were trying to tell the PUC, the commissioners, that there is no treasure there. These are just dirt roads. No, they're not much. But we know different, and that's what's so upsetting to everyone here. This is how these are their snowmobile trails. That is our winter business. So these are the businesses in the Forks and Karatunk, and these are the jobs that my husband and I have, and all the other residents, people who can. The only reason why you can afford to live in these places is because you're working in these businesses. And this is directly impacting your residents. It's our livelihoods, it's our way of life. It is going right up. When 500 people a day go up Coburn Mountain, they're not going to see the spectacular view that they see now if this corridor comes through. They're going to see blinking lights, they're going to see a fragmented forest. It's crossing right over it. These are not just logging roads. And that's exactly where this is going. So the reason why people go to these remote ponds, and the reason why people are fishing down the Kennebec Gorge and they say, I have never been for so long where I have never seen a building structure or any kind of industrial structure. They're not going to say that anymore, and it may not be the goal to come here anymore. And so that's why so many people are so passionate and why it's so personal that this now happened. And about your point about the $22 million being nothing, it is nothing. If Vermont was offered 380-something million, and New Hampshire was offered 210 million, why isn't Maine worth it? And I'm not saying any amount of money is comparable or any amount of money is worth it, but this is like a mockery for Somerset County and for the state of Maine and for what makes us special. So I think you're absolutely right. 22 million might sound a lot for someone who just makes a little bit of money, but it's really nothing. And I think...
You know, can I just say one thing? To answer to one thing you said, we were asked earlier how we bought into this early on, but you just, part of what you said is why. What we decided to do, I don't know tonight, but we were told, just what you told me, that Caratunk voted yes. You were in favor of this project. So early on, these are the informations that we were getting, right? So, and I only say that so everybody can hear, we didn't do this in a bubble. We heard that there were communities that were in favor of this. They were in favor of the distribution of the proceeds from the 22 million to further the snowmobile trails, whatever it was that was needed in the area. This is how we came to that letter we wrote. So, and it is really different than the letter we wrote. It was a whole different thing than what we wrote about for wind towers.
Did we know about the 22 million at the time we wrote the letter?
No, but
I don't think
we
that had
knew
even
that
come
they,
out.
well, we didn't know the amount, but we knew that there was ongoing conversations about what they were going to do for the communities. I mean, Sip and I sat in on some of these early meetings, and these were the things we were told.
So, just so you know, the West Forks is rejected it, they're interveners. Caratunk rejected is their interveners. The Forks is having a town vote on the 13th because the public outcry has been so high. There's a lot of other towns in Somerset County that are following suit. So it's just that everything was hidden for so long, and things are just coming to light. And then, you know, you start thinking about it. You start thinking about this 300-foot swath coming through. You know, clear cuts grow back, but when you're spraying herbicides, these are not going to grow back. And what are they going to do? They're going to go right into the streams. It's hurting the fisheries, the brook trout fisheries. It's hurting the deer and the moose habitats. It's right in our wintering habitats. So this is, you know, it's affecting our whole ecosystem. It's affecting the hunting guides. I know it's going to affect the food that I eat because I fill up my freezer with it. So, you know, you just keep thinking about it, you keep looking at it, it goes deep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Jennifer Poirier, resident of Skowhegan, longtime camper up at Rock Pond and user of the recreation areas of Spencer Road. I did send you all an email on the 20th of last month. I hadn't heard from any of you, so I did print them out to ensure that you did in fact receive them. I won't go into that because you can check that in your leisure time. I do want to hit on one thing that CMP said. When asked how they chose where they were going to put the lines, they said that they put a lot of thought into the areas and that sort of thing. But at the PUC hearings, they actually admitted that the reason why they chose that path is because that's the land they were able to buy. So it has nothing to do with, you know, mitigating damages or views, scenic things that are going to be destroyed. It's all because that's the land they could purchase. That's the only reason why. Rock Pond, Alden, we see each other all the time, you know. I have pictures I can show you. That whole area, you know, half the pond, all you're going to see is these big 95-foot poles. Going to totally destroy it. You know, you'll see a few trees, power lines, and then the mountain. What good is that? You know, crossing over a stream, actually destroying some of the area that's accessible to the public as well, because I mean, who's going to want to camp within 40 feet of a big pole? You know. Did you say that it's for the benefit of Maine? I find that hard to believe, just because there are so many other states that didn't want in on this project too, that wouldn't actually be with CMP. You know, Vermont already has all of their permits, even the presidential permit. They have a go-ahead, but one big difference, their project would be totally underground. A lot less impact to the scenery and to the public in general, but it costs them a lot more money. That's why they want to go with CMP. That's why CMP wants overhead, because they'll make the profit, you know, with less money involved.
It's been, you guys have been awesome, I'm telling you. We've been fighting with, had issues with Central Maine Power for the last 5 or 6 years, due to substations. We live in Benton, we own up in Carrollton. We finally had a relaxation here for 6 months, finally saying, hey, you know, everything's fine. Then we hear about this corridor going through, you know, within a quarter of a mile of our property. And I'm telling you people right now, you've done your homework, because we didn't have the resources when the substation come through. The only thing I can tell you folks, the commission there and stuff there, is listen to the people and do your homework, okay? That's all I can tell you. If you don't do your homework, people are gonna be hurt. It ain't just, everybody's talking about, excuse me, I'm getting dry. Everybody's talking about, you know, the wildlife and all that stuff. I can tell them what's affected our 100 acres that got taken away from us. What's gonna happen up there. And then, as far as them lines coming through with the EMFs, people aren't talking about that. These lines put off a lot of stuff. Nobody's touched on that today, I understand that, but I just had to say something. It's just been, I mean, God, I'm still shaking now, but I know what this is gonna affect. I gotta be careful of what I say, but what Central Maine Power is telling you, 150 feet here, there, and all that, they'll tell you what you wanna hear. Don't be buffaloed by the 22 million or whatever they promise you. Taxes don't mean nothing. That's a piece of property up there, all the way from Quebec all the way down. Our biggest thing was in our town was people, when the substation was approached, it's not my backyard, I don't care. Well, I'm telling you right now, the state of Maine cares about this.
You all know that the commissioners really don't make the decision. The decision is made in Augusta, so the place where you're gonna have the biggest impact is in Augusta. When they hold their hearings, you wanna get down there, you wanna see your delegates, you wanna see people that are gonna make the decision.
We'll be there again and again.
I just wanna make sure you know, these guys don't actually make the decision.
But our biggest thing is we would like them to rescind their support.
We get that. I
It
just
makes a
wanted you to know
difference.
that the place to really hammer it home is gonna be at the State House.
Right, we are, but when the states come out, I mean, when the towns come out against it, and the county comes out against it, as it's happening all over, it will make a difference in Augusta.
Yep.
They listen to you far more than they listen to we individuals.